Hi there. Welcome to Bible/Chat. We've been
Hi,
off
John.
for a while.
I know
Gus.
we have
Hi,
been.
How are you?
I'm doing well.
We had when Jason was here, we did a lot of videos. He
Guess he's
worked,
smarter.
he worked harder. I think is probably the better. I'm
That's
just
what it
kidding.
was.
Here he is back from Spain, folks. Gus Pedal.
I wasn't in Spain.
I'm just kidding.
I was working in that office over there.
Whatever. I don't want to hear your excuses. Okay, so we are.
I was
we have-
working in that place that you call an office.
That's actually a cage. Anyway, so we have a question. I have a question for you about the current series you're doing in Sunday school.
You don't want to talk about my 22-week series on sin?
The horse was dead. You kept beating it. The horse was gone. You're beating the ground.
Yeah.
No, I'm
There
just
was no
kidding. That was
cells
helpful.
left.
It was actually very
There's
good.
no cells
Very
left.
helpful. But I do want to talk about the attributes of God. So when we talk about the attributes of God, my main question is, some of it is kind of heady and theological.
Yeah.
Like if you just take what's heady and theological, why would we do a study like that in church? And then what do those heady theological things do in the practical Christian life?
That's actually a very good question.
Thank you. I thought so.
If only I would have had a week to prepare this. But I think that obviously we wanted to do something practical for people. And theology is practical.
Yeah.
There's not such a thing as just theology for theologians.
Right.
And we don't theologize for theology's sake. But we want to make it practical, and we thought to do a study. We're calling it "No One Like Him," based on a book that came out about maybe 10 years ago, a little longer, called actually "No One Like Him," maybe 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
And
Who's the author? Just for those.
John Feinberg. It's a pretty thick book, and it deals with theology proper, theology about God the Father mainly, and part of it, I think he deals, and I don't think he deals with the attributes of God, and it's very helpful to read what he says. We might not agree with everything he says, but one of the things he talks about is how the attributes of God are they help us think biblically about who God is. And it was Tozer who said, what you think about God is the most important thing about yourself. And we sometimes have this idea that God is just God. And because I'm just a human, I need to accept everything from him. And while that's true, we still need to know him. And I think his attributes, which are, his moral qualities, who he is, have a huge bearing in who we are. So, for example, one of the things that I love about God is that he is self-existent. We dealt with that last week at church, and the fact is, and we call that aseity, right? And the fact is that God is self-existent, and that nothing completes him. He's just complete. Well, you and I need our significant others to complete us, right?
Speak for yourself. No, this is recorded. I'll be hearing about this later.
You will.
Anyway, go ahead.
She doesn't listen. Let's be honest.
Okay, truth. Yeah.
She will be sent this
video will be sent.
Video. Well, we need our significant others to complete us. We need family. We say things like, I need to find myself. God doesn't need to find himself. He doesn't need to go backpacking through Europe to find meaning to his life. He is meaning to his life, right? So and that is important because, we are so dependent on God, and he's completely independent. So he's the independent God. I'm a dependent human being who depends every day of God for everything.
Totally.
Even the independent American, they would say, "Oh, I pull myself. I've done all these things." He depends on someone else,
of course,
and that it just brings solace into our hearts, because we know that, hey, whatever happens in our lives, we depend on God.
That's actually like a really interesting thing when you think about like even Americana, like the way that we think about ourselves. Like we sort of do think of independence as our moral like high ground in a sense. Like we want to be independent people, and I think there's some things that are good about that. But in a sense, like our dependence becomes a means of worshiping God.
Yeah.
Like our weakness shows His strength because we show I'm actually like I'm radically dependent on Him for everything, and that's actually a means of worshiping God as opposed to saying I don't need anything, I don't need God. No, I actually desperately need Him.
Yeah, and I think that we tend to think of God as, because we don't know Him as we should, so we tend to think of God as just like us.
Yeah.
He values what we value.
Yeah.
And then we value ourselves way more than we should. Yeah. And we think of ourselves wrongly as well. And I think it was Berkoff who said that the more we know God, the more we know ourselves.
It bounces the screen.
That's true.
You're very preachy. Go ahead, you were saying, Berkoff?
Berkoff said that the more we know God is the more we know ourselves. And I think it is true. Like the more we know God, the more we know, hey, I'm completely the opposite of God. Yeah. And in this case of independence, in the case of we're going to look at this week, God being spirit, and that's one of His qualities. He's spirit. He's invisible, and Paul worships God for being invisible. And you might think, well, why would he worship God for being invisible that you can't see? But just think about the fact that God can be everywhere at all times because he doesn't take up space.
Yeah,
he's with us. He's with us right here, right now. Even hearing us talk about Him, like He's here.
That's awesome.
And that should bring hope to us. And you're never alone. And I think that this idea that when Jesus is talking to the Samaritan woman, and the Samaritan woman is telling him, oh yeah, the Jews say you need to worship in Jerusalem. We say we need to worship in this mountain, and God gives her a lesson. Jesus gives her a lesson on God being spirit.
Yeah.
Why would He say that? It's because religion is not a place, right?
Yeah, totally.
It's not religion is God being spirit. He's everywhere. You can worship Him in spirit and in truth. And sometimes we think about, worshiping in truth, but this idea of Him being spirit helps us and gives us hope to know that He's everywhere. We can worship Him. We don't need to go to some kind of pilgrimage to go find Him.
Totally.
We can worship Him
He's
now.
With us.
Yeah, He's with us.
That's awesome.
And then He's with us, and then He was manifested in the person of Christ, right? Yeah. And that is incredible. And the New Testament talks about this over and over again, that no one's seen God, but Jesus exegeted Him. He explained them, which is so glorious to think about.
Totally. So. Yeah, even like Christ is in many ways is like such a beautiful thing, because like even like in God's independence, Christ became dependent.
Yeah.
So He chose dependence so that He could die, right? And He chose to be seen, even though He was, He
deformed His body forever, right?
Totally.
He's now localized.
Yeah.
We can say. Yeah. I remember my son asked me, we were talking about Christmas. He was like 4, and I was talking about the incarnation, and I never thought about it before this. And he said to me, "So if Jesus has a body, where is He?" I was like, "Oh yeah, He is somewhere."
Good question.
You're right.
Yeah.
Quiet. Don't ask me this tough question. But it's true, right? Jesus will forever now have a body, and He's localized at the right hand of the Father. So.
That's awesome. That's super helpful. So those things give us they inform our minds about God, lead us into worship, and then help us to practically live under the care of this being who is independent and spirit and all of His attributes, so that we're aware of who He is more and more.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. Well, super helpful, man. Thank you. I've enjoyed the classes. When it looks like I'm falling asleep in the back, I'm not.
Yeah, you're taking notes.
I'm just
on your phone.
Exactly. Anyway, I hope this is helpful for you. If you have any questions, anytime you can email us at info@faithbibleoc.org. Thanks for listening.